Okay, well, would like to welcome everybody to our community conversations on climate change virtual panel. We've been doing this every month for, I would say, probably 6 or 7 months, with the idea of providing education on climate change and climate change solutions. I'm Tanya Caballa. I am the Lakeshore Outreach Organizer for West Michigan Environmental Action Council, and for the last year have been happy to work for them in that capacity as we are expanding our Muskegon and our Lakeshore presence, which is very exciting for me as a lifelong Muskegon resident, and I think exciting for the organization. And our idea with these workshops is to provide education. There's mainly, so much that we can do if we learn about climate change and we talk about it to people and get a working knowledge, that our goal is to increase the level of education on climate change and solutions. And we are working with the Michigan chapter of the Sierra Club. We have Sarah Trestador, and Lori Coleman is a member of our planning team. She's with the new White Lake Area Climate Action Council. And Renee Hesselink, Vice President of Sustainability for Nichols and Muskegon, who's on every sustainability task force in the area, has been part of the planning team as well. So I want to make sure that they're acknowledged for their efforts. We do want to ask you to remain muted during the presentations. Sometimes there can be background noise or echoes. If you have a question, go ahead and please put it in the chat. Maybe a little bit later, we may open it up to live questions if it seems like it's going to work. And the way that we organize this is we have everybody give a brief presentation. Our moderator asks 2 questions because we want this to be very specific and very action oriented. We want people to go away with some very specific takeaways as far as information and actions that they can take. And then we open it up to questions from the rest of the attendees. And it looks like it's a small enough group that we're going to be able to make that live. So I think that will be interesting. So we did have someone who, let me see in the chat box, I'll just mention that, who can give presentations on climate change in the Great Lakes region for students. And she put her information in the chat box for you. I'm going to start with our moderator, who I am fortunate to work alongside. Of course, she's in the Grand Rapids office, Elaine Starrett Isley, and she is the Director of Water Programs at WMEAC, and she has 15 years experience working on stormwater policy and green infrastructure. Green infrastructure is the nature-based solutions that we're talking about. That's kind of the technical jargony term. And we're trying to introduce that term to folks, but we're also hoping that the nature-based solutions conveys the fact that these are solutions that are in nature to help us deal with stormwater and other climate change impacts. She's also worked for the Ennis Water Resources Institute and has a wide-ranging background in this topic. And so I'm very glad to have her as our moderator, and she is going to get us started. She's also going to handle Carlos Calderon's slide presentation on rain barrels because he is ill today. So I'm going to let you get started, Elaine.
Thank you, Tanya. So yes, Tanya said nature-based solutions is what we call green infrastructure. It might be called green stormwater infrastructure or low-impact development or water-sensitive urban design. We have all sorts of jargony terms for it, but it really is, there are ways to manage stormwater runoff more naturally to help the water soak into the ground like it would if we didn't have anything built that would stop it. So Tanya asked me to give a quick rainwater, stormwater 101 overview for everyone. So I apologize if this is pretty basic, but when it rains, like it has been doing all day, in the natural world, it soaks in, or the trees take it up. It's caught by our natural spaces. But we don't live in natural spaces. We live in the human world where we have homes and driveways and roadways that block that water from entering into the earth or entering into the plant life. And since stormwater is our #1 source of pollutants to the waterways, because when that water doesn't soak in, it flows over those hard surfaces and carries greases and sediments or dirt, oils, fertilizers. It carries those pollutants to our waterways. It goes directly to the waterways. Storm drains don't go through the wastewater treatment plant. So everything that we do on that land affects our waterways. More and more people are recognizing the need for these nature-based solutions. And when I say people, it can be the general public, but also the municipalities who are ordered to manage the stormwater. They're more aware of these solutions. They're being required more and more often through permits to utilize these solutions. But it's still a growing field. We're still relatively early on. Education is necessary, and sometimes we need to work with people to do things in a new way. So that was my quick introduction, but since I am also going to substitute in for Carlos tonight, so Carlos Calderon is, let's see, can you guys see that?
Yes.
Perfect, okay, let me, there we go, okay. So Carlos works in the water team at WMEAC. He is originally from the Straits area. He spends most of his time in West Michigan now with his family. He has his education from GVSU in aquatic sciences and watershed ecology, and he has spent time at WMEAC for the last year, but he also has worked for GVSU, LGRO, which is the Lower Grand River Organizational Watersheds and part of Grand Valley Metro Council, and he is certified as a National Green Infrastructure Certified Professional. So we're really lucky to have him on our team, and he was going to give you an overview on rain barrels. So we have had a rain barrel programming at WMEAC for over 10 years. It is a form of green infrastructure. It's not natural, but what it does is it captures the rainwater off of roofs. So it's a form of rainwater harvesting. So instead of the water coming down the downspout and going onto the driveway or into the storm drain or over the lawn, it captures that water so it can be released on the lawn at a slower pace. It conserves rainwater for future use and manages and helps infiltrate it into the ground because it's not competing with the rest of the rain. Whoops, sorry about that. Apparently my cursor's gone a little wild. So in West Michigan, we tend to get 30 inches annually, which it does not include our snow melt. And an average mid-sized house roof is about just a little bit less than 1,000 square feet. So that gives us 19,750 gallons per year that runs off of that roof. So capturing it with a rain barrel can help mitigate that problem. And you can then use the water for watering your lawn. You can use it to wash your car. You can make compost tea to help provide more nutrients to that water that you're using. And then he's provided some bird bath and art that this was done by our environmental education director. She has much more skill than I do at painting birds. It's beautiful.
You do want to be careful when you're utilizing that water. It is not potable, so you don't want to drink that water directly. There is some conflicting information about whether or not it's safe for garden plants. It is, but as you would with any other thing you buy at the grocery store, it's better to rinse. And then it does build up algae inside the rain barrel, which is not harmful to humans, but it's generally unsightly. Again, watering plants, garden plants, watering flowers, it's not going to hurt that at all. Mosquitoes and other pests can be an issue, but if you can keep them out generally with screening, and there are natural solutions to be able to kind of help control the buildup of that in the rain barrels. So with that, I am going to turn it over. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And then
turn it over, and I apologize. I was prepared to announce Carlos. I don't know who's next, Tanya.
Me.
I will announce Claire. And, I do want to clarify too, because I'm not sure we've made it entirely clear. One of the biggest impacts of climate change is just a lot more water in the atmosphere. And so that means that, so that's why we're having the focus on stormwater, all of the extreme storms that we're having, and the excess water and the flooding. It is because of climate change, because we have a lot more moisture in the atmosphere. So that's why we're presenting these solutions to deal with that excess moisture in the air. And so
Absolutely. As a result of climate change, we're seeing more storms more often of greater intensity. So it's depositing more water onto the landscape more often and in extreme circumstances. So it does give everyone more to have to manage.
And these are tools that have been used, in the past just for regular stormwater, but they're that much more essential now with the situation we have now. So I'm happy to introduce Claire, because she is someone who I've worked with for years. So I will let her introduce herself and talk about her really fascinating project. Thank you, Elaine.
Okay, let's see. All right, everybody see that? I want to tell you about the Native Landscape Project at the White Lake United Methodist Church, about why and how it began, its benefits for pollinators and for management of stormwater at the site, and our needs for maintaining the site in the future. I became interested in native plants after having done a lot of reading relating to pollinators being in trouble, in part due to loss of habitat. I had also learned that many bees are specialists. They need native plants to survive. I had also learned about the importance of corridors, pathways that connect small pollinator habitats like home gardens with bigger habitats such as meadows. Also, native plants are more likely to thrive in local weather and soil conditions. I had become concerned about lawns because turf grass doesn't provide habitat for wildlife. It doesn't filter rainwater that carries pollutants from cars. Mowing uses oil and gas, causing air and noise pollution. And fertilizers and pesticides are often used on lawns. Specifically, I was concerned about our church lawn. This 2014 aerial view shows the parking lot and the expansive lawn, also shown in this 2013 photo. In 2012, we had discussions at the church about replacing portions of the lawn with native plants, but we weren't sure where to begin and didn't take action. But then, in September 2013, I attended a meeting of the White Lake Area Sustainability Network, newly formed by Tanya Caballa and Mike Mack, and I mentioned my concerns about our church lawn. That set the wheels in motion. In October, we had formed a green team at our church. In November, 7 experts from the community joined 8 church members for a walk around at the church to brainstorm options. Following that November meeting, Green Team members identified 2 other concerns that were related to the church lawn. Our parking lot needed to be replaced. and the steps to our main entrance impeded access to our front door. Connections were made. The Great Lakes Stewardship Initiative connected us to Montague sixth grade students looking for turf reduction and rain garden project. Connections were also made to David Schultz Land and Water Consulting for parking lot planning, and to the Muskegon Conservation District for tree and shrub selection. By December, only 3 months after we had begun, sixth grade students were standing in front of a meeting of our congregation, educating us on the importance of turf reduction and offering ideas. The students echoed our own hopes for this native landscape project. We hoped that others in our community might decide to try native plants in their own yards. The students eagerly planted their pollinator garden on May 20th, 2014. This garden ultimately provided plants and seeds for gardens throughout the rest of the landscape. Meanwhile, we began meeting with David Schultz regarding our new parking lot. We wanted to raise the whole west side of the lot to eliminate the steps. We wanted bioswales within the parking lot, and we wanted a retention pond. This 2014 topographic survey shows the old parking lot and the stormwater ditch. This grading plan for the new parking lot shows a downward grade from the northwest to the southeast corners of the lot. This 2021 aerial view of the new parking lot shows the locations of the trees, shrubs, and gardens that have been added to the landscape. So, goal number 1. First, the front steps were removed. Then, fill was moved from the southeast corner of the property to the west side of the parking lot. Now there are no steps to the front entrance. Goal number 2. Here are the bioswales in 2015. And here are the bioswales in 2021. We have planted native trees, shrubs, flowers, and grasses. And for ground cover, we planted wild strawberries. After a rain, the south end of each bioswale sometimes fills with water, but the water usually subsides within a couple of hours. Goal number 3, the pond. Any rainwater flowing across our parking lot that goes beyond the bioswales makes it to the pond area. In October 2016, the Muskegon Conservation District and volunteers from the church and community helped plant native trees, shrubs, and hundreds of flowers and grasses that we had started from seed. This is the pond area in 2021. This area, like the bioswales, is full of native plants to take up and filter any pollutants from the rainwater that flows from the parking lot. If you create a pollinator garden in your yard, you will be rewarded with visits from wonderful guests such as these. People like to walk, bike, drive, roller skate, and skateboard through our church parking lot, enjoying the flowers and the wildlife activity. I now know that this project was too big for any organization or church that needs to depend on volunteers for maintenance. Although I'm working to make the gardens easier to maintain, I am going to need solutions and help from our wider community to care for this pollinator habitat and see that it continues to exist into the future. For individuals wanting to make a difference, just begin. Go to your local garden center and look for native plants, or check out some of the resources listed on my next slide. Be sure to start small. You will provide a valued stop for pollinators making their way from site to site through corridors in our community, and you will be rewarded by their presence. I just want to remind you that this slide will be available in the video. Now I'd like to introduce Katie Brown and Anna Watson.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Anna Watson, and Katie and I are going to talk a little bit today about the project we did in Montague, Michigan. First, we want to introduce ourselves a little bit further, though. So I'm Anna. I'm a senior at Grand Valley in the fall. My major is environmental and sustainability studies. I have an emphasis in culture and water, a minor in business, and a certificate in geographic information systems. And this summer, I'm an intern at Annis Water Resources Institute, where I'm looking at the effects of road salt. And Katie.
Hello, I am also a senior at Grand Valley, majoring in environmental and sustainability studies with a focus on culture in the built environment. My main focus and research has been in quality of life, along with that, this summer I'm completing an internship with Friends of Grand Rapids Parks. I'm working with the urban forestry team as well as community outreach. The reason we had the chance to work on this project was because Anna and I were in a class with Dr. Boudet last semester that was called Environmental Problem Solving. And this class focused on the design thinking process, using a systems thinking approach in order to problem solve environmental issues. We were seeking solutions specifically for the climate mobilization action plan put in place due to the climate emergency ordinance issued in Montague. This past year, our group identified areas in Montague that would benefit from stronger nature-based stormwater solutions in an effort to decrease pollutions in White Lake. We had the chance to have discussions with community members and officials on what identified issues were. And along with this, we researched solutions that could be implemented in the city of Montague.
Okay, so these are 4 of the solutions that we came up with. One of them, tree planting in areas that are prone to flooding, and then rain gardens and bioswales, road salt alternatives, and salt tolerant plants. And then here is a map of all of the places we thought might benefit from the certain solutions. And Dr. Boudet actually has a link to an interactive map. If anyone is interested in that, she just put it in the chat if you were wanting to look at that now or later. So the green areas were bioswales and rain gardens, kind of at the end of the steep streets. Dowling Street, Hunt Street, and Laisley Street all have a yellow pin on them. And we marked those yellow for road salt alternatives that we thought might benefit from those. Blue, tree planting, as well as there's many other places that were prone to flooding that could also benefit from tree planting. The red pin we thought was a good spot for a sustainability center, which is actually where they do their farmers market as well. And then purple, which is the Dowling Street, Thompson Street Bridge that connects Montague and Whitehall across White Lake, we thought might benefit from salt tolerant native planting on the sides of that. Okay, so salt tolerant plants. Road salts, kind of why are they a problem? I wanted to list that first. So road salt runoff can be highly toxic to the environment and species that exist in the habitats. Road salts do not break down once they enter the environment in a natural way. So that poses a problem. Road salts can also change organismal behavior and kill off species in high levels. Road salts reduce soil permeability and fertility as well. So they ruin habitat in that way. And then in extreme levels, they can even cause lake stratification issues and prevent lakes from mixing with the seasons. So we figured out that road salts were a problem in the area when we did a city tour with Jeff Ock, and he showed us around Montague and mentioned a few places that they were looking at for these stormwater control solutions. And we saw the steep hills and the steep streets, and that they were right to White, kind of back in that map, it showed that. And so we saw that road salts were probably a problem, and we thought that a good spot at the bottom, that bridge that I showed you, would be a good spot to add the plants, because if we planted them along the sides of the road, then the runoff would run into the gardens before running into White Lake and killing off any aquatic life and polluting the lake. And also around the campground drain pipe, which wasn't marked in the map because we didn't know that was a problem. That's something I've actually identified in my internship. But around the drain pipe, the vegetation there they've found is often killed off by the road salts during the melting season as well. And that link at the bottom there, we got this information for tolerant plants from MSU. And on the right side of the screen, we have tussock sedge, corkscrew rush, and water horsetail. And these are all plants that are native to Michigan and road salt tolerant, but we don't know if they actually are native to the White Lake area as well. That's something that I'm looking at right now in my internship. So that's kind of to come in the future, possibly.
Okay, so the road salt plants and then the tree planting were kind of the two that we chose out of the four that we researched over the semester that we thought were the best, or not the best, but the solutions that we wanted to focus on the most, and probably the least amount of like infrastructure that needed to be brought in. So as I said before, I've been doing my internship with the Friends of Grand Rapids Parks, and they have a great program for urban forestry. They are actually trying to increase the tree canopy in Grand Rapids by 40%. And I'm not entirely sure about what the time frame is for that. But they just see a lot of benefits from urban forestry. There's a lot of areas in the city where trees have been taken out and cut down. And of course, like a mature canopy just has so many benefits. So the National Fish and Wildlife Service actually saw the benefits of trees, and they issued a grant to Grand Rapids Parks for $250,000 in tree plantings just for the Plaster Creek watershed this year. And that's specifically for stormwater management. So some of the benefits that have been listed and that we researched is that tree canopy mitigates stormwater before it hits the ground. So if you think about like driving down a road and it's covered in trees, instead of the water just hitting the ground and running down the road, it's going to hit the tree first. And a lot of times it's either going to run down the tree and go down around its trunk into whatever land it's on, or it stays on the tree and then it evaporates back to the atmosphere and it's more of an organic process rather than hitting the ground and taking whatever pollutants it has with it. Another great benefit of the trees are that the root systems help break up compact soil and assist surface water in infiltrating the urban soil. So it's kind of self-explanatory. They act as a sponge and a filter. So instead of the water just going down into the dirt, it's a little bit more filtered. It's kind of the same as the native plants as well. And then of course, like keeping the soil in place. So some species that are good for the tree plantings, riparian species, those are the types that should be planted along water, but a lot of times they often can be planted in areas that flood. So like if there's specific areas in Montague, like the ones that we highlighted, they can be planted there and they can suck up an enormous amount of water in a short amount of time rather than letting that water pool. And of course, as with anything, this wouldn't be right away, but it's an investment over time. So I just listed black oak, excuse me, and red maple as two of the riparian species. But there is a really great tool, which I think Dr. Boudet, she's going to drop that in the chat as well. It's called iTree. And that is a tool that's put on by the US Forest Service. You can use it on a desktop or a phone, and it helps you figure out what kind of tree would be great for the location and what kind of environmental services you can pick up from that. Yeah, but I think that's all I had on the trees. Just think that they're a great solution. And I think it is Debbie next.
Can I throw in one little fact to help Katie out? It's not an exact answer to that she said, but according to the Green Grand Rapids plan, which was put forth in 2012, the city's goal was to increase their urban canopy by 35.7% by 2015. I believe it was changed in 2017 by the Urban Forestry Committee of the city to the 40%.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think I am, can everybody see the details so far? So thanks, everybody. You know, this is kind of a culmination of all of the education and such that you guys have shared. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a project that the city of Whitehall implemented, Green Street on Lake Street. I am Debbie Hillebrand. I'm the mayor here in the city of Whitehall. I've been on city council here since 2015. But my day job is the owner and the innkeeper at the Lewis House Bed and Breakfast. So lots of fun stuff happening at the house, lots of gardens, lots of plantings and things. And I give all of the credit to my husband, Greg. I love looking at it. I love wandering in it, but he does all of the tending and ideas and implementation. So thanks to Greg, he's on the line. So I'm a chemist by education. I spent 17 years as a regulatory project manager at Procter & Gamble. So, you know, lots of the chemicals and pollutants and things that we're talking about, super familiar with. Just a fun fact, I am a wine lover and student, and I currently hold a certification, a level 2 certification from the Wine and Spirits Education Trust. So I like to wander Greg's gardens with my glass of wine. We've already heard a lot about why the stormwater is a problem. When it hits our hard surfaces, it picks up all the contaminants that have been dropped there and carries it basically directly off to our waterways. So the green street is made up of, it's designed to manage that stormwater by capturing it at its source and incorporates vegetation, soils, engineered systems. And you know, we've already talked about how those things function. It slows the drainage and filters the water before it can get to our waterways. Lots of the benefits we've already talked about. It helps our water quality, replenishes our groundwater, absorbs carbon. Some of the things, you know, obviously it's an aesthetically pleasing solution as well. So that's always good. People like to walk around and look at the gardens. It can also provide some safety as a bit of a barrier between a trafficked street and sidewalks and bikeways. Why did we do this in Whitehall? The city of Whitehall actually has a long history of environmental remediation for the betterment of White Lake, all the way from cleanup of past pollutants and problems with chemical plants and things like that, to implementing current and future best practices. there was a project on Division Street when they were reconstructing it, where they implemented some specialized storm drains that proved really successful. So when it was time to work on Lake Street, it's really close to the lake, and it was really close to a site, a brownfield site that was being remediated. So it made a lot of sense to try to incorporate some of the green infrastructure into that. So the city worked with engineers at Prine and Newhoff to develop an integrated green street that has several different elements that all work together. One of those is specialized filtration storm sewers. So as the water hits from the outside, it just looks like a manhole. But on the inside, it causes the water to swirl like a vortex, and it filters out sediments and particles before it can filter down into the ground and then into the waterways. We've talked a lot about bioswales, and they're certainly implemented in the Green Street project on Lake Street. It's basically the vegetative ditch that helps filter out pollutants with different layers of soil and pea gravel and such that before it gets down into a drain pipe. So here's a picture of one of our bioswales. This is right along Lake Street, kind of off the parking lot there where the helmet plant is. And this is part of it today. So you can see the natural vegetation that's growing up. And when I first saw it, I thought, ooh, that's kind of messy. But it really is, it's serving a great purpose. You can see the cutouts in the curb on the picture on the left where the water can get into those bioswales. Another piece of it is the permeable surfaces. All the parking that is along Lake Street is done with permeable pavers. And then you can see on the one on the left, the parking spaces are even spelled out with different colored permeable pavers. Retention basins that create wetlands and habitats for creatures and help to filter out the water as well. Street projects are never cheap. This one is no exception. The total project cost almost $1 million. It's about a half-a-mile stretch, which is not very far if you think about the grand scheme of the 26 miles of streets that we have in the city. So half a mile is $1 million, but 42% of that were the upgrades, I'll call them, for implementing the green street. That 418,000 we were able to get grants from that, from the EPA Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, as well as the Alcoa Foundation. So that's a really great resource, and super happy that could happen. So does it work? Well, we have, there's a single discharge pipe that enters White Lake, and it hasn't shown any evidence of discharge of any kind. So we're taking that the street is 100% functional. It requires a little bit of maintenance on the vegetation, and some of the drains need to be cleaned now and then. But overall, there's very minimal maintenance. We will continue to monitor on an annual basis, the surface and things like that for any damage and any pavers that need to be replaced or repaired. But we will do a reconstruction if it's necessary out into 2033. So it's a cool project. If you're in the area, come take a look at it. It's right along Lake Street. It's a half a mile. Won't take you very long, and it's really quite pretty. So that is all I had. So thank you for that. And I will turn it over now to Michelle Seltzer from the Environment, Great Lakes and Energy.
Great. Thank you. See if I can bring my presentation up here quick. Screen. Can everybody see my screen? Can you see my screen? Not able, let's see.
Yes, we can see it.
Yes. Thank you. I reduced my window with the video. So great. Well, thank you for the opportunity to present on a couple active opportunities related to planning and implementing green stormwater infrastructure and those nature-based solutions that we've been hearing about so far. Great presentations. So let me see if I can advance my slide here. So a little bit about me. I actually grew up on the west side of the state. I'm originally from Wayland, which is south of Grand Rapids. Spent a lot of summers recreating on Lake Michigan and spending a lot of time up in the UP, where I fell in love with the UP and ended up going to Lake Superior State University and getting my bachelor's degree in biology and botany. I also have a master's degree from Davenport University. And I've worked for the department for a little over 15 years now, and its various iterations and evolutions over time. My current position, I'm a senior environmental quality analyst for the department, and I'm currently serving as the Lake Erie coordinator for the department. So I work a lot in Southeast Michigan, as well as statewide, but really cut my teeth working on green stormwater infrastructure efforts in Southeast Michigan. So I can bring some of that experience and translate and cross-pollinate ideas to the west side, hopefully tonight. I wanted to just kick off, there's this great opportunity, it was mentioned. It's fantastic to see that the city of Whitehall took advantage of some GLRI funding. There is a current active request for applications out currently through EPA. And it's under there's 5 focus areas of the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. And the focus area I'm talking about tonight is related to the non-point source and near shore health focus area. And there's $9 million available in grant funding. They will likely support about 24 projects under the 3 following categories. This one applies to shoreline communities. So green stormwater infrastructure implementation in shoreline communities with a special emphasis on underserved communities. The types of projects you've been hearing about already, but the eligible projects activities include bioswales, pervious pavement, constructed wetlands. The next category is related to the riparian restoration and really focused on reducing runoff of nutrients and sediment to help protect streams, rivers, and also to enhance and restore wildlife habitat and populations as well. Types of projects that are eligible under this funding opportunity, this line item: vegetative buffers along streams, constructed wetlands, and 2-stage ditches, which are ditches that these are more out in the agriculture landscape. Your more traditional drains are often very straight. This sort of 2-stage ditch approach is more of a stepped approach. So as the water fills up in the ditch, and then as it begins to recede, the sediments and the nutrients can kind of settle out onto the sides of the drain versus just kind of rushing out into the nearest stream or Great Lake. And then the final category available under this funding opportunity is related to legacy phosphorus in agriculture settings specifically. So this is really targeting the Macatawa watershed, for example, that has been known to be kind of a hot spot for nutrient loading to Lake Michigan. So they're really looking at targeting those heavily fertilized areas that have a legacy of phosphorus built up in the soils. And then using natural as well as engineered solutions to kind of capture phosphorus and nitrogen and other nutrients and contaminants in these control structures. But then there's also the opportunity to look at either restoring, enhancing, or creating wetlands. New kind of floodplain areas where the water can kind of, again, run off instead of and infiltrate versus just kind of shooting straight out into the nearest water body. And then again, an eligible activity under this funding opportunity is those 2-stage ditches that I mentioned. There is a funding webpage for this funding opportunity. It's the non-point source runoff webpage, so I've provided the link there. Applications are due August 20th. But they are having a webinar next Monday from 12:30 to 1:20 p.m. There's open registration currently. I've provided that link here as well. And similar to tonight's presentation, the webinar will be recorded and the slides will be made available on that webpage. These are often really great opportunities if you don't have the time to participate actively on the webinar. It's really great to be able to go back and there's some really great questions that get asked about eligibility, timelines, and those sorts of kind of specific details related to developing the proposal. I provided the GLRI contact here for EPA as well. And the next funding opportunity relates to some great work that the Michigan Coastal Management Program has been focused on in recent years. And they're really honed in on working with local coastal communities on sustainability and resiliency planning. And so they're working in partnership through this Coastal Community Resilience Service Grant in partnership with the Land Information Access Association. And this funding opportunity offers communities, coastal communities, the opportunity to develop a sustainability assessment action strategy. So this is an opportunity for community members, the community leadership to come together and look at the current master plan and zoning ordinances that are in place. And through the lens of coastal resiliency, look for opportunities as well as those barriers that may be holding a community back, and taking a jump and really kind of making your community a bit more resilient as it relates to climate change. So this is a very straightforward process, and it only takes about 1 to 2 months. And so the group, Coastal Management and Leah can help the community bring your stakeholders together. So this is a great opportunity for citizens to get involved in this process as well, and right from the beginning. So I think that's pretty really cool. So it's not kind of a closed process. It really tries to open it up to the community to engage in the process. The deadlines for those applications, it's kind of a first come, first serve. So the opportunity is open currently. Their funding amount ranges between $3,000 to $15,000, depending on the community and the needs there. So you can certainly reach out to Matt Cowell and get more information on your eligibility and what's a good fit for you, and they can assist you with that proposal development. There are some requirements for municipalities. You must be located along a Great Lake. There has to be a commitment made by way of a letter of commitment to adopt some of what what has been determined to be your path forward. That might include updating a master plan. If there isn't a master plan in place, you can work towards getting one implemented, or shoring up some of those zoning ordinances that may, again, make the community a bit more climate resilient. There is a 1-to-1 cash match that needs to be brought to bear for this project to move forward. And then there is this shorter time frame. They're looking to have projects at least underway by December 2021. So if you are aware of a community, or you're in a community that might be interested in this type of planning process, there's some really great information on this resilientmichigan.org. And you can also contact Matt Cowell directly with Leah, and he'd be happy to field any questions that you might have, specific details that I'm not really privy to. And then finally, I just thought I would throw out some green infrastructure and nature-based solution resources that I visit quite frequently when I'm thinking about working with communities on protecting and enhancing the Great Lakes. Again, the Michigan Coastal Management Program has a wide variety of resources, tools, from, basically from how a landowner can work on their own properties to address climate issues and nature-based solutions, all the way towards more regional planning efforts that are good examples that communities in our state can use as well. There's the NOAA Digital Coast. Again, this is a really great, they have a specific web page just for green infrastructure resources. Some great national case studies that can be looked at as well. Again, you know, there's a lot of great tools and resources out there, from homeowner all the way up to a municipality or a regional council of governments, for example. Michigan Sea Grant web page dedicated to green infrastructure has another really great set of resources and tools. One particular document that I recently reviewed again and had a lot of great information was related to an integrated assessment that Sea Grant recently undertook, looking at barriers and opportunities to implement green infrastructure in small to medium, and provided some great case studies there on advancing green infrastructure in communities. So I would encourage you, if you're interested, to look up that integrated assessment on the Michigan Sea Grant webpage. And then finally, in recent years, there was a Michigan Infrastructure Council formed to look at infrastructure needs across the state. And one recent campaign initiative underway through that council is Dig Once. And there's a project portal where communities can identify projects that they're looking to implement. For example, road construction projects, as the mayor mentioned. If there's property owners along that reach of road that are interested in implementing some green infrastructure projects or addressing stormwater, this is an opportunity for each of those entities to know who might be doing what, and an opportunity to leverage resources to get those projects done in a more coordinated fashion. So for those that work with municipalities, may not be aware of this campaign. So I would encourage you to take a look at the Michigan Infrastructure Council website to learn more about that. And so with that, I think I will go ahead and turn it over to Elaine.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, everyone, for your presentations. Those were very informative, and I think we all appreciate them. So before we jump into the questions that the audience might have, I have just two. And so this is going to be a general question. One of you can answer it. If you each have something to say, just let me know. The first is, what does everyone need to know, the top 1 to 3 things about nature-based solutions? Does anyone want to take a stab at that?
I can.
Thank you, Anna.
Yeah. So I guess I was thinking more about our project specifically. But ours had a lot to do with understanding the watershed, first of all, and then also taking in context of just the area around you, the terrain, geographic features. So like I said, when we went on the tour and actually saw the city of Montague, it put a lot of stuff into perspective and even brought up new ideas. So just making sure you understand the area of where you're wanting to implement your project, and kind of where that water is going to go at the end of the project also. So.
Anybody else have anything they want to share?
I do. I want to ask if there's anybody on the call. My name is Greg Hillebrand. I live with Debbie, who gave the presentation tonight. And I want to ask if there's any insights or advice on how to develop a more green Lewis house. So we have a pretty good, I think, thing here. If there's, I would like to have some more like green aspects to it. So if you do want to call me or call Debbie, please do. And I'm very happy to incorporate more green stuff at the Lewis House. Thank you.
That actually leads to the second question, which is what are the things that people can do that they should be doing regarding greening their properties, implementing green infrastructure? I don't know if anyone wants to tackle that. I have lots of things to say, but I wasn't a speaker, I was a moderator, so.
Well, and that's okay. And the reason we're asking these two questions is all of you are relative experts on this topic. And we're pulling in folks who are just learning about green infrastructure. And so we're giving them a great overview, we're giving them specifics. But really, if you could just say, you know, from your experience, what is the most important information going forward? Because we want to leave attendees with, this is the most important, you know, out of all the 20, 30 things we heard, you know, they're all important, but take this away and take this action away. And so that's kind of what we're aiming for is what's the top priority? And Elaine, you can certainly offer input as well. So, and then Greg, we'll be able to pick up your question in a few minutes if folks have additional information for you.
You know, the one thing, Tanya, you mentioned, you know, provide some personal examples. And one thing that resonates with me is and working with, and many of you from West Michigan and this neck of the woods are aware of the areas of concern program and those toxic hotspots. And I, for many years, was an area of concern coordinator. But working with small groups or large groups of people, really a spectrum, offered the opportunity to see how a small group of people who are interested in doing something can form a green team, right? You know, you get a group of people like-minded, have a vision, maybe not all the specific details, but have a vision, come together, and then seek additional technical or financial resources to get the work done. I was fortunate enough to live in the city of Hastings, and at the time met with a couple people and we're like, let's form a green team. We called ourselves the Hastings Green Team, and we were a sustainability team. And we started talking with the mayor, and the mayor became interested in the topics, you know, that we felt passionate about. And so working with these groups through the areas of concern program, it really inspired me to become more civically engaged. And that was my kind of foot in the door. And from there, I ended up, when I moved to Lansing, became involved with the Mid-Michigan Environmental Action Council as a board member. And again, just sort of educating myself about what was going on in the community. And my passion was green infrastructure and urban agriculture. And so finding those opportunities to become more civically engaged, if it might be volunteering with WEMIAC or other organizations like the church groups and things like that, I think really add a lot of value to the community. And then Greg, to your question, you know, is there opportunities for you maybe to start implementing rain gardens or something, and then providing some education signage? So as your clientele are coming and walking through your beautiful gardens with their glass of wine, it's an education opportunity. And it doesn't have to be big signs, you know, but little places and things to sort of educate people about the importance of implementing native plantings or managing the stormwater. How many gallons are you helping to keep out of the stormwater system every year? You know, take that square footage and figure out how much rain and then determine your gallons. And that, I think, to me has impact. People in a more passive manner can really take in that information and go, I wonder, you know, what I can do, you know, when I go back home. So those are my kind of initial thoughts. I really think it's important, especially as I mentioned, the coastal program looking at master planning and ordinance development. Some of that might be dry stuff, but it's really important for the community membership to get engaged in those processes and bring your desires and things to the table.
Can you guys hear me okay? Oh, sorry.
Yes, no, I'm just thanking Michelle. Please, Katie.
Okay. My mic quit working, so I'm like, I don't know if everybody can hear me. I just wanted to continue from what Michelle was saying. Something that we found in our kind of our research and our talking to community members in Montague was that there wasn't really a central hub, like for all the people who had these cares or wanted education. There was nowhere for everybody to centralize. So that was one of the things we thought of, WEMEAC, you see the place in Easttown. And so, okay, there's a place I can go to look for information. But it seemed like at least for a while, there wasn't that sort of place in Montague. And it sounds like maybe they're starting, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that maybe they started establishing something in the farmers market for a little hub for education. And I just think that, of course, grassroots is great, but also the city or the people who have a little bit more power can come in and establish these things for people to come together and volunteer and have that central hub. So I just think that that's pretty important groundwork for people.
I think that's a really great point. The Southeast Michigan Council of Governments received a GLRI, or a Great Lakes Restoration Initiative fund money a couple of years ago, and they're actually working within their 7-county jurisdiction, targeting communities to implement just pilot projects, rain gardens on the municipal public lands with that education signage to raise awareness. And I think that's really important to do. And so there's this funding opportunity available under the GLRI currently, the competitive bucket, for that kind of work. So even just, having your regional groups come together and have a really region-wide approach to doing that, because even the small, we need this kind of work in small and large communities, rural and urban. Yeah, that's a great point.
Can I add on to that? That is one of WEMEAC's goals, is to have a physical location, probably in the Muskegon area, which we postponed because of the pandemic, but we are going to be opening a physical office probably at the end of this year for that focal point, so people know where to go. And I also want to take the luxury of offering my word of advice. Is there is so much work that can be done at the community level. Engage with your elected officials. As someone who was on city council for 12 years, I would have loved to have had people come and encourage our city council to do some of these things. And it didn't happen. And sometimes when you're the lonely person on council raising your hand and want to do it, it doesn't happen, And then I would also suggest put your name in to be on planning commission, because those are important places where you can make decisions and run for office. The local level is a huge place for action, and I think it is really not very well known. So that would be my kind of my encouragement.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Kendall. Hi. And maybe Mary Bernadette M.I.N. The gender makeup of this group tonight is pretty much female. I just want to ask why that is, and because it shouldn't be. And it's where are the guys in this thing? Can I just throw that out there? I mean, it doesn't, it's statistically female. So why is that? And
Yeah,
is that an opportunity?
I hope so. I don't have a good answer, and I popped on late. I just kids and sleepover, and I just lost track of time. And I was happy to hop on at the tail end of this at least. But yeah, I don't have a good answer. I'm particularly just getting really into wanting to make a difference at the local level. Literally, Tanya, what you were just saying about getting more involved with your like city council. You mentioned like the planning commission. Like I wrote that down because like I want to do that. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know why there aren't more males, you know, making their voice heard right now. I'm not sure.
Because I think that I don't think that
Greg,
it's
if I may, Greg, since you mentioned my name, Mary Bernadette Minnick Weatherly here.
hi,
My
Mary.
husband, actually, Mark Everhart, sitting next to me, is a forest biology major from MSU.
Awesome.
So, and I am the political person in the group.
Yeah, and I'm the
Colin.
science guy.
And he's the science guy. So together, we work together with the 2nd Congressional District, which I'm the chair of the Communications Committee. I'll be presenting what we learned here tonight to our next meeting that we have next month. And I'll be leaning on my husband to help me regurgitate what everybody has said here tonight. So
Okay.
we're able to make a good presentation for what Tanya is doing here. So that's why we're here.
I actually have, and I apologize, this is really more for the panelists, but I've been involved in environmental activism my entire adult life. I mean, I started out as a teacher and became a obsessive volunteer who got hired. And there is actually a tradition of women stepping up as environmentalists, whether they're unpaid or whether they end up in the nonprofit environmental field. And I did see that change over time. And I saw the environmental nonprofit world become a little bit more formal, with people, having degrees and things. But I do think part of it is just associated with our traditional roles. I was a teacher, I guess I had the luxury and privilege of being an obsessive volunteer when my kids were growing up because I refused to go back to work. I was a substitute teacher and private tutor for years because I didn't want to go back full time, but also everything I've done has not really made a lot of money. And in our traditional world, that's not as possible with the man in a traditional role of bringing home the most money. So that may or may not be true, but I think, I've had people say, why are you doing this for free? Volunteering for an environmental group, or why are you working for such little pay? I think it's because I didn't have that idea in mind that I was the person bringing home the bacon, even though I have been since 1994.
My comment more is about I think that environmentalism is a gender neutral thing. And so there's an opportunity here to bring it bigger to a lot more people. And I don't know, how do we do that in our White Lake area, but we can do it. We can do it.
Well, I want
to go ahead, Lang.
Yeah, I want to comment. So I do a lot of presentations. Before COVID, they weren't virtual. Now they're virtual. Some are not virtual. And it's not that usual for the entire audience to be primarily women, in my experience.
Okay.
And a lot of the professionals that I work with are men and women. So I pulled together a group of women professionals because we do feel like we want to have our voices heard. So congratulations to Tanya for pulling in this great panel. Keep in mind, we are missing a panelist, Carlos Calderon, is he was ill today. So he works for me. I said I could probably do justice to his presentation. So so it's not for lack of men being involved. It's just that for whatever reason tonight we're skewed. At least
Well,
that's
Okay,
It
no
is
worries.
something to think about though, because even if you look at anyone who knows, and Claire knows this, the White Lake Public Advisory Council that I helped to start. And we met monthly for about 22 years. Most of the time, Claire and I were the only women. And I do think there are some traditional gender roles that play in because women do volunteer. Probably a little bit more than men, just still because of those traditional roles. But a lot of the women in the community that we saw volunteering were volunteering for school, for church. We're a small community, so we had a sizable competition for volunteers, you know, so it's just not, and it was very different, you know, you're dealing with technical issues and, you know, so I think I want to kind of leave it off there, but I think it should be gender neutral, Greg, and I know many men involved in this in a variety of ways, but I do think it's important to recognize that there are still some of those considerations at play.
I want to just add, though, I think there's a really great opportunity, and I think Claire's presentation brought this forward, and we're seeing more of this in part because kids are cheap labor, but it, you know, fostering that environmental stewardship within your youth, in your community is really important. And these green infrastructure types of projects are something kids can do, and it's tangible. Something they'll remember, and then, you know, they're going to take that information home. They're going to be looking at their own yards. They're going to be looking at their own neighborhoods. And I think that's where we really have an opportunity to engage that youth stewardship capacity that we all have in all of our communities. And so it was really great, Claire, to see your presentation. You know, I bet those kids were passionate. They were excited. They were ready to get their hands dirty, you know, and that's what's going to make this green infrastructure movement go. We're going to engage those youth. We're engaging graduate students, undergrad students in these sorts of projects that take a lot of energy to do. And we don't always have that capacity. So looking for those opportunities to bring in the youth energy into this work, I think is really critical. They're not going to be interested in the master planning and the zoning and all that other kind of wonky stuff, but getting their hands dirty, beautifying their neighborhoods or their churches and, you know, their places in their community. That's where the sweet spot's at, I think, moving forward.
So I wanted to real quick answer the couple questions. So what do people need to know about this topic? What I want people to know is that these projects don't have to be expensive. Debbie talked about a road project. Road projects are going to be expensive. If you wanted to put examples of green infrastructure, which were sort of given, but there's porous pavement and porous pavers. There's rain gardens, there's rain barrels. You can leave a space more natural. So if you have trees, don't cut down the trees. Let the trees help you with that. You can plant trees along roadways to help filter the water. You know, there's the bioswales, which are like green ditches, I think is the best way to sort of describe them, that help the water flow. There's a lot of these practices and you can do them on your property. A rain garden does not have to be really expensive. There is master rain gardener programming, so there is learning for how to do a rain garden currently through the Washtenaw County Water Resources Office. WEMIAC is working to develop one of those similar programs in West Michigan. We've been talking with the Muskegon Conservation District. So yes, we're trying to have a hub. We've had a little office in Muskegon. So we're in Muskegon. We're just hard to find because we're at the Anarchist Water Resources Institute. But we're talking with the Conservation District about how to implement more of these practices throughout Muskegon County. But yes, it doesn't have to be expensive. You can start small and you can still make a difference. And then the other actions that people can think about when you're thinking about stormwater think about what you're putting on the land. So make sure your car is maintained, that it's not dripping. Make sure that when you are salting, because this is Michigan, we are going to salt in the wintertime, but make sure you're not putting on excess salts. Make sure that in the summertime, that if you're fertilizing, that it's not a phosphorus-based fertilizer. Make sure that you're not putting that fertilizer down right before it rains. You know, make sure that you are doing what you can so that less things are getting into the water to start with.
Yeah.
So there are lots of things that we can do. It doesn't have to be daunting. I am not familiar with Greg, you're at Debbie's property, so I can't give you specific advice there. But yes, I think a rain garden is probably a really great idea since you obviously have that really green thumb. So, so there's that. Before I turn it over, I do want to get to the chat. There are a couple things. I think most questions have been answered in the chat. But there are a couple questions about plastics getting into the waterways. Where was that? Do I have experience in the control of plastic pellets and nurdles in stormwater from industrial facilities? I do not, but I do know that there has been some research on plastics and microplastics getting into the Great Lakes out of the Holland area, out of Hope College. And I remember seeing a presentation on that. I think it was in December 2019, because it was right before the pandemic. So I know that there is research being done about even recognizing that as a big problem. I don't have a lot of experience working with controls for that, though. I don't know if anybody else, like Michelle, I don't know that I can't speak to that particular issue. And I think I saw one more.
And I know it's an emerging concern, absolutely. Yeah. That's something that's being picked up by the federal and by national agencies currently. So there's no quick fixes for them. They're hard to detect. And so until we monitor and really understand, you know, you'll pick them up if you're looking. And so there's a lot of work right now, research on detecting the different various sizes of microplastics. And there is some funding available out there through, I think no other marine debris might be starting to pick up microplastics types of projects, but and then there's sort of like the beach cleanups also, opportunities for communities to go out and clean their beaches of that kind of debris as well. So Michigan Sea Grant is a great resource for looking at, you know, beach debris cleanups and things like that. But that it's pretty limited because the research is just emerging right now in the Great Lakes region about the importance of managing microplastics.
Okay. It's 8:30 and I want to be sensitive to everybody's time. So is there anything that any of the speakers want to say, or do we have any last questions? I think we can probably handle one more question. Okay, it looks like Mary has something she'd like to say.
Actually, my husband Mark does.
I have a question for Katie and Anna. I don't live in Whitehall or Montague, but I've been there. And the last time I was there, the little causeway bridge thing was pretty much underwater. And I was wondering, since White Lake is part of Lake Michigan and it's going to fluctuate with the Great Lakes, how much of their work is looking at mitigating those rises, which I assume are going to become more frequent and probably even larger moving forward because of climate change.
Yeah. So when we took our tour, actually, the bridge was not underwater, but there were bags up in case of flooding. And I remember I had asked the city manager, Jeff Auck, kind of if they had a long-term plan there. We didn't get to talk for very long about it, so I have some very surface information, but he said that that is something they're looking at in the upcoming years of completely redoing the bridge. In one way or another, whether they raise it in some way, raise it and make sure like water can flow underneath it, something like that. And so he was talking about with the road salt tolerant plants that I was discussing, planting those along the sides of the bridge. He was talking about that that's something they might implement in the future if they do a whole bridge reconstruction project. and then implement some rain gardens with road salt tolerant plants on the sides before that water washes onto the bridge. But that's kind of all the information I have there. I don't know if Katie has any further information on that.
Okay, thanks.
I do
It's
not, but
actually-
that's a good question.
It's actually a MDOT. It's a business highway, Mark. It's an MDOT project, and they have said that when they, you know, the next time that they, you know, are going to do upgrades, they're going to have to consider that. You know, so it's not something that's easy for either city to deal with because they don't have jurisdiction. It's an MDOT issue, but it's interestingly, as much as it's a very obvious bolster to the flooding, we really, and we've had some really fascinating videos, haven't we, Debbie? Where the guy who owns the kayak place, you know, got some free advertising as he was in his kayak on the parking lot. He's subsequently moving though, it got too much, but we really haven't had that. It's been an issue, but it's been less than it might appear sometimes, given that system is up for good. But we have not usually been unable to cross for too many times. And it certainly is dependent on the weather. I don't think we've had it at all this year. But I think
this is one of the This is one of the roles that WEMIAC has played in places like Grand Rapids, where we are able to come in and do things that the city leaders who may be elected aren't able to do. So we can push the advocacy and we can push to sort of work on with the community to do best practices.
Be the convener.
Exactly. And I want to mention really quickly that there was a project, and WEMIAC can't take credit for this one. The neighborhoods did this one, but there is a project in the city of Grand Rapids. It's actually one of the city's focal. We show it off whenever we can, green infrastructure practices, and it's along Plainfield Islands. There are a bunch of islands that were put in the middle, and the road was redesigned so that the water would flow, and the stormwater management happens underground. It bubbles up into these garden beds. That was an MDOT project, and it was led by the community. The community said, we are having flooding issues. We want to deal with this. And the city said, I'm sorry, we don't have any money. So the business association said, well, what if we helped raise some money? Can you match it? And so they did. They raised, it was like $90,000 in a really short, like 3 months. And then MDOT came in and they partnered with the city, and the city matched part of the money. And so it works. So you have power. Tanya talked about, planning commissions and everything and elected officials, but you have power as citizens to help work with your business communities, to help work with MDOT, teach them new ways to do things. And so
Elaine, I would like to propose that the current two-way street right now on M31 across the bridge is working just fine.
Okay.
And having the pedestrian walkway is a big kind of like add. So now they've like created a place for bikes and people to walk across the bridge safely. And I don't think that the current situation where the road has been bagged and everything with 2 lanes is a hindrance to traffic. So I would propose to MDOT, why not make that the way going forward and have a pedestrian and bikeway for people to walk across?
That's probably not a bad option, Greg, although I have a feeling they may need to do some raising of that road generally, just based on the predictions going forward. And Lori Coleman, who lives in Montague, reminded me that our local grocery store, probably the only independent grocery store in Muskegon County in Montague, does suffer losses when that is closed. So it hasn't been closed you know, days and days and days, but even so, it does affect his business. And Elaine,
Well,
before,
it affects all of Montague when the bridge is closed. It's not just the grocery store, it's the entire city. And it's not, but raising the roadway is, now that's a totally different problem. And that would be huge money to raise the roadway.
but
Right, but as we're seeing more rain, it may become necessary.
yeah, they have a regular upgrade, and they basically said they're going to address the flooding issues with that regular upgrade when it comes. But ideally, there will be people on both sides of the community weighing in on that as far as making sure that it's a good fit. But you know, certainly what you say about there being more room for bicyclists and bicyclers and pedestrians makes sense. That's why I regularly ride my electric bike and don't worry about traffic. But I did want to mention something about the rain barrel, Elaine. So Carlos was going to talk about rain barrels, and Elaine, you know, talked about it. And one of the things that WMEAC does is they put on rain barrel workshops where they, you know, show people how to use rain barrels and provide them at a cost. And we are going to have one in the Muskegon area. And the cool thing is the city of Montague is going to be a co-sponsor, and the White Lake Area Climate Action Council. It's, you know, it looks like a lot of our effort has been kind of focused on the White Lake area, and it just kind of happened that way based on some of the projects. But I think it also just showcases the activities, and also city of Montague is the first city on the lake shore that has declared a climate emergency, working with the White Lake Area Climate Action Council. And they are, you know, they're focused on their own city operations, but they're also doing a lot of education. And so they did an electronics drop off about a month ago, and they're very open to things. And when we asked if they wanted to do a rain barrel workshop, they were like, absolutely. That's a long, you know.
So what was the date of that one?
We don't have it, and I apologize.
Okay.
I was trying to, but we will make sure that people who attend this get that date. It'll be this summer, and you will be able to sign up for it. There will be a cost for the rain barrel, but it's exciting that, you know, the city of Montague is, you know, stepping forward kind of an educational role. And also, this is just slightly off track, but there is going to be a electric vehicle charging station in Whitehall, a new one. And we're going to be, WMEAC is going to be partnering with Consumers Energy and the White Lake Area Climate Action Council to have an electric vehicle rally. So there will be a grand opening of that charging station, and there will be electric vehicles at that opening for folks to, you know, take a look. And probably can't drive them, but you'll be able to see them. So a lot of good things going on in the White Lake area. So I'm going to hand it back to you, Elaine, and then I know Sarah has some final words.
Okay, I think that we've gone a little over time, so I don't have anything else I need to say. So if I'm turning it over to Sarah to wrap us up, then I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, and I'll be super brief. On behalf of the Sierra Club and WMEAC, we want to say thank you for those who presented. They were really informational. I'm glad it was recorded. I'm going to blast it out to our Sierra Club folks in the region to listen if they weren't able to attend. And also for the folks who were able to hop on. I know we had some technical difficulties at the beginning. Because we're over time, Tanya, I'm going to skip the reflective question, but just know that this is our last community conversations on climate change for the summer. We're going to take the next couple months off, regroup, and we will be requesting feedback from y'all. So look out for that in your inbox. Did I miss anything?
I don't think so. I just want to thank everybody for showing up tonight. Please get in touch with any questions or any ideas or any partnerships that you want to propose to us. And probably in about a week, I'll be able to send out the recording to folks. So be watching for that in your email. And thanks, and stay dry out there. Get your nature-based solutions in place, and have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.